Hey everyone, it's Miss Leah back for another story time. While we're waiting for people to join us, I'll go through some of our pre-show. I will be reading a book by Patricia Polacco today called The Bee Tree. I know this shows up backwards for you guys, but The Bee Tree. And she is an author who's given some special permission for her books to be read aloud online during this coronavirus quarantine. So we will get to read something that's not quite as old, and it's a pretty fun book. It's a little silly. My kids and I in our school today, we were studying bees this morning. So I hope that you guys know all about how important the bees are and how we are dependent on them and for our food supply. So I have with me my little sample of spring, and I got some seeds. You guys see my seeds? I like to garden. I'm not super good at gardening. In fact, when I lived in Kansas, I hardly could grow anything. I don't know. There wasn't enough rain, and I don't pay enough attention to water things like you should. But here in Illinois, we get a lot more rain, and I think that my soil must be nice because things grow in my yard. So since things grow in my yard, I keep planting things. So I have already planted some snap peas and some spinach and some carrots and some lettuce, I think, and some cilantro. Because those things you plant even while it's still cold outside. And then you kind of have to wait for the sun to come out and warm up the soil. And then you can plant more of the flowers and vegetables that grow when it's warm outside, because they need a lot of sun in order to grow and bear fruit. But I bought today some things that we're going to get ready to plant outside. We've got some sunflowers. I plant those every year. And they bring lots of birds to your yard because the birds like the seeds. And so last year we had some yellow, what were those birds that came last year? They're yellow. I'm going to look it up. Goldfinches. Yes, goldfinches. And they're really pretty birds. So we're planting some of those, and I'm going to plant some dill. I've never grown this before. But dill is a host plant for swallowtail butterflies. And a host plant means that's where they build their chrysalis. And so then you can maybe have some more butterflies in your yard if you grow dill. So we're planting dill. We're going to see what happens with that. We're also planting some butterfly weed. And the reason it's called butterfly weed is that the butterflies love it. And so do the hummingbirds and a lot of other things that need to pollinate the bees. They like butterfly weeds. So we're going to plant this. This is a native plant, which means it's from our country. And so it's a good one to plant if you want the birds and the bees and the bugs that are actually from here to come to your yard, which I do because I think that's exciting. Okay, so I hope that you guys have been able to get outside today. It's beautiful and sunny and very spring-like. It actually is warmer than a normal spring day, I think. And my girls are outside right now barefoot. And our poem today is called Spring Grass. Do you like to go outside barefoot and put your feet in the dirt, feel your feet on the soft grass? I do. It's good times. Okay, this is by Carl Sandburg. Spring Grass. Spring grass, there is a dance to be danced for you. Come up, spring grass, if only for young feet. Come up, spring grass, young feet ask you. Smell of the young spring grass, you're a mascot riding on wind horses. You come to my nose and spiffed feet, this is your lucky year. Young spring grass, just after the winter, shoots of the big green whisper of the year. Come up, if only for young feet. Come up, young feet ask you. And this is from the Bible. This is Psalm 147. Who maketh the grass to grow? Praise ye the Lord, for it is good to sing praises unto our God. For it is pleasant, and praise is comely. Great is our Lord, and of great power. Who covereth the heaven with clouds? Who prepareth rain for the earth? Who maketh grass to grow upon the mountains? He giveth to the beast his food, and to the young ravens which cry. He giveth snow like wool. He scattereth the hoarfrost like ashes. He casteth forth his ice like morsels. Who can stand before his cold? He sendeth out his word, and melteth them. He causes his wind to blow, and the waters to flow. Sing unto the Lord with thanksgiving. Praise ye the Lord. Well, it is definitely getting warmer out. And like I said, our story today is called the bee tree. Now, if you go outside and you look really closely wherever there are buds on the trees or flowers that are already in bloom, you might see some bees out and about collecting their pollen. So we're going to find out what happens when you find a beehive. You guys ready? This one has lots of pictures, so I'll try to remember to show you. I'm tired of reading, Grandpa, Mary Ellen sighed. I'd rather be outdoors running and playing. So you don't feel like reading, eh? Feel like running, do you? Then I expect this is just the right time to find a bee tree, he said, taking down a jar and putting on his lucky hat. What's a bee tree, Grandpa? Mary Ellen asked. Well, it's where the bees make their home. It's where they keep the honey, the sweetest in the land. Grandpa chirped excitedly. But we already have honey, Grandpa, Mary Ellen said. Ah, but not honey like this, her grandpa answered with a wink. Mary Ellen and her grandpa put on their coats and went outdoors. They walked down past the hollyhocks to the garden and found bees gathering pollen from the flowers. Her gramps carefully trapped some in a glass jar, making sure not to hurt them. When he was sure he had enough, he smiled and leaned close to Mary Ellen. They'll take the pollen back to the hive and make it into honey, and we'll be right behind them. Then he slowly loosened the lid of the jar and let one single bee escape. It stayed on the mouth of the jar for a moment, flew straight up, then buzzed towards the cornfield. Quick now, run! Grandpa called out as he began to chase the bee. Just then, Mrs. Gowlick from down the creekway was walking baby Sylvester in his carriage. Mary Ellen and her grandpa ran by them. We're off to find a bee tree today, Grandpa shouted. I haven't done that since I was a girl, Mrs. Gowlick said excitedly. May I come too? Grandpa motioned her to follow, and the three of them were off and running. Baby Sylvester laughed out loud as his carriage bumped and bounced through rows of corn. Honk went a goose as it waddled after them. Can you find the goose? As they came from the cornfield and crossed Dietz Junction, Einar Tundevold came around the bend on his squeaky old bike. Where are you all going in such a hurry? He asked. A bee tree, Mary Ellen puffed as the foursome scurried by. Chasing a bee to its tree. This I would like to do also, he said, as he stood up and pedaled faster. The wheels of his bike went tweedle, tweedle, squeak. Their boots slapped the ground. The buggy pitched and swayed, and the goose honked as they ran after that bee. The bee swooped down, stopped, held in midair, then circled past them and headed straight for St. Joe River. Olav Lundhagen, while strolling on the nearby shore with the charming Herman sisters, Petra and Dorma, looked up and noticed the commotion coming towards them. Where are you all going? He called out. To a bee tree we are going, Einar Tundevold puffed as he pedaled by. Can we come too? The two lovely ladies pleaded. Fast, you'll have to run, Einar said. We don't care, let's go, the three shouted as they raced after him. Slap, bump, honk, tweedle, tweedle, squeak, thump. They all went as they sped down the road after that bee. Klondike! Bertha Fitchworth, just back from an expedition in the Yukon, had car trouble next to the road. She looked up just in time to see everybody running by. "You say you're after a bee tree?" she shrieked. "Zounds, that won't be easy, but eureka, what an adventure!" So she sprinted along behind them. The bee dipped and soared as it made its way out of sight. But Grandpa carefully let another out, and the chase was on again. The noisy, merry bunch galloped up over Bird Talk Fellow Ridge, only to run smack dab in a fiduciary long drop's herd of goats. The goats bleated and bucked as the people clambered through them. "What ho!" Fiduciary called out. "You're going to scare me goats." "A bee tree," a voice called back. With that, Fiduciary tooted his flute, and he and his flock joined the chase. "Bounding Billies, this will be great," he said on a dead run. Three traveling musicians looked up just in time to see a thundering stampede of goats, buggies, people, and bikes coming straight for them. "Why are they all running, Pa?" one of the boys asked his father. "We're after that bee," Grandpa said, pointing at the small dot in the sky. "It's leading us to a bee tree," Mary Ellen wailed as they streaked by them. "Come along, Klondike," Bertha chortled as she huffed past. Slap, bump, bleat, haunt, tweedle, tweedle, squeak, thump. They went as they ran. Hoofs clattered, rows of corn were parted, nothing really mattered but chasing that bee. They ran through Griner Bluff and into Bishop's Meadow, around Dead Man's Tree, and then to Bird Talk Howl. As they ran down the hollow, the bee took blinding speed and disappeared from their sight. They all stopped to catch their breath just in front of Dunk's Woods. Grandpa handed the jar with the last bee in it to Mary Ellen, and she let it out. Sure enough, it flew straight and low, right into Dunk's Woods. "It's the bee tree," Grandpa whispered. "That's where the honey will be, but we'll need plenty of smoke." Everyone set about to build a smoke fire from twigs and damp leaves. When the smoke had quieted the bees, Grandpa balanced on Einer's bicycle and reached into the tree. As he pulled out small pieces of honeycomb, he dropped them into some of Baby Sylvester's spare clean diapers that Klondike Bertha was holding. Mary Ellen tied them into neat little bundles, and Mr. Lundenhagen put them into the baby carriage. The musicians played merrily as the Herman sisters danced. Grandpa invited everyone back to the house for baking powder biscuits, fresh brewed tea, and, of course, the honey. There was music, dancing, tall tales, and raucous laughter as they all buzzed about the sweet adventure of that day. Grandpa took Mary Ellen inside away from the crowd. "Now, child, I am going to show you what my father showed me, and his father before him," he said quietly. He spooned the honey onto the cover of one of her books. "Taste," he said, almost in a whisper. Mary Ellen savored the honey on her book. "There is such a sweetness inside of that book, too," he said thoughtfully. "Such things, adventure, knowledge, and wisdom. But these things do not come easily. You have to pursue them. Just like we ran after the bees to find their tree, so you must also chase these things through the pages of a book." Then he smiled and hugged her. From that day on, Mary Ellen never again complained about her reading. She found it to be every bit as exciting as a wild chase through the Michigan countryside and as sweet as the honey from a bee tree. I hope you guys are reading lots of books at home. I'd love to hear what you're reading. If you want to share with me in the comments, that would be awesome. And I hope that you're getting to have adventures through books, even if you can't leave your house. So I will see you again tomorrow. Thank you for joining me for Story Time with Miss Leah. Bye-bye.